I'm going to pre-apologize. I have pockets full of tissues because I'm an old lady who has a cold right now. I have not talked all day so that I'll have a voice for you, so I really apologize that if I do any coughing and sneezing, you have to hear it amplified over speakers. So I'm really sorry. Every October the 2nd, the seasons start to change. I get super excited for about 3 minutes, and then I get sick. So it's great. So this is my October sickness. It's awesome. That's me. I'm Susan. I'm a Canon Explorer of Light. It's pretty rad. I run an online education site called The Wedding School, also pretty rad. That's pretty much what you need to know about me, because I only have 45 minutes, and I don't want to tell you about my bio. One of the things that I deal with sort of week in and week out with weddings is light that sucks. And I heard Sal say terrible swear words up here, so I think I'm safe with sucks. I might say shit. We'll see how this goes. I'm so conditioned to not swear when I'm on stage, but I swear like my language is just vile in real life. So if something slides out, I apologize. He can bleep it later. But I'm based in New York, and New York is an amazing, wonderful, filthy, expensive, disgusting place to live. I've been there for 10 years. I'm never leaving. I love it with my whole heart, even though I just want to murder it on a daily basis. Never am I angrier / more in love with New York than when I'm shooting something. An engagement session, a wedding. New York is incredible in photos, but to make it look incredible is often incredibly difficult. It's, like I said, crowded. The getting ready rooms are very tiny, even in super expensive hotels. There's people everywhere when you go outside. Nothing about it is easy. So I spend a lot of time at every wedding that I do solving problems. And a lot of times those problems center around difficult light. So for a very long time, I started my business in Tallahassee, Florida. I've been doing this for 17 wedding seasons. And my first, 4 or 5 years in business, I spent a lot of time trying to find shade. And on the beaches in Florida, there's not really a lot of that. And I started looking at what my competitors were doing down there, and they were doing the same thing, going and hiding under palm trees, finding places to get yourself out of the sun. And I thought, if I could be different from everybody else and get people to hire me instead of them, I need to provide a different look to my images. So I started venturing more into the sun and more into the sun and finding the weird light and finding the strange harsh light at 12 o'clock in the corner of the parking lot and working with that. And it allowed me to develop a style that was different from the other photographers in my area. And the second I really locked down on that and things were going great, I moved to New York, which was awesome, which actually suits my style even better because I don't have to deal with the beach anymore, which is great. So learning to love difficult light was something that I did sort of based out of necessity, but has now become something that really lets me set myself apart as a photographer in a city where I probably have 10 wedding photographers that live in my building, right? So we're going to talk about 4 completely different scenarios, and I'm going to try to talk about it in the next hour. We're going to see how that goes. And the 4 are, number 1, dark or windowless getting ready rooms. Also, AKA shitty getting ready rooms. The Hampton Inns, the Motel 6s of the world, the conference center, like the getting ready, oh, we gave you a huge room, and then we realize it's like actually the conference room in the hotel, and you're like, oh no, this is actually terrible. Hotel rooms in New York, New Jersey, they're not great. And there's a really interesting misconception that when you reach a certain level of accomplishment in your career, that all of a sudden all of your problems go away. They don't, they just get more difficult. And so I find myself in dark, difficult, weird-shaped, funky getting ready rooms almost every single week. Sometimes I have input on where my clients get ready. I can offer up another solution. If I know that the venue they're going to be getting ready in is going to require them to be in a hotel for part of the day, I can kind of get ahead of it and try to suggest hotels, but that's not something that often gets to happen. The second is outdoors at noon in the summertime. It's everybody's favorite time to be outside, because it's multiple things that I don't like all at once, which is outside, noon, and summertime. We are moving into the greatest of all seasons, which is winter, where it is cold and dark at 4 o'clock, like the inside of my heart. No, I'm just kidding. But I love winter. Maybe it's because I grew up in Atlanta and I lived in Florida for so long, but the second it dips under about 60, we are in my happy zone until about May, when I'm very unhappy again. Dark reception spaces. and being outside at night for portraits. And by dark reception spaces, I mean anywhere from a Hilton ballroom to the plaza, anywhere that's dark. When clients don't uplight the walls, when there's no pin spots on tables, when they do that thing at night, which is to give you a romantic ambiance, which just means they turn the freaking lights off. And you're like, this isn't romantic, I just can't see where I'm going. And then doing night portraits. Because a lot of times clients will want to go outside and, oh, can we do a night shot? And then you realize that your night shot locations are an alleyway, the street, or an alleyway by the street. Like, there's not a lot of options. So how do you make something compelling when you can't rely on your scenarios and it's dark, right? So we're gonna fix all of these things in the next 45 minutes, all of them. What I used to do in the past is head for the shade or throw a flash on my camera and just throw a bunch of light at the scenario until everything was lit up and there were no shadows in any corners. I actually don't do either of these things anymore, ever. In no scenario do I throw a flash on my camera and blast all of my light at anything, ever. And I can't think of the last time I tried to find shade. Shade's my least favorite. I also love it when I get to a wedding and like it's cloudy outside and somebody is gonna say, oh, but cloudy is better for pictures, it's like nature's softbox. And I'm like, uh-huh, it is, it's great. So scenario number one, I'm gonna jump right on into it. Dark or windowless getting ready rooms, or ones with terrible mixed light. That's also my personal favorite. Is you've got overhead lights on that are different colors from the corner lights, that are different colors from the bedside light, that's different from daylight, which is different from the light coming from the bathroom. It's great, I love it so much. All right, so, sorry, my remote is also insane. This is what most getting ready rooms look like. It's a hotel. There's a bed, usually too close to the window. There's furniture that isn't great, and there's a window. It's pretty much what you've got in varying sizes from large to small. This isn't bad. If I walk into a room like this is fine with me because it's going to let me create exactly what I want in a way that a lot of other photographers might not go for. So 3 simple steps to make a room, like the room I'm staying in upstairs, look great. Number 1, turn off the lights. You're gonna do this and some very well-meaning mother of the bride or bridesmaid is going to go, oh my gosh, it's dark, somebody turn the lights off, and we'll try to turn it back on. But you're gonna turn them back off. I want every light in the room off. Overhead, bedside tables, night lights, the bathroom light, everything. And I'm well aware that you can't always do this. You can't do this while people are getting hair and makeup done. You can't do this while, someone's doing something in a corner. This is at the point of time where either the groom or the bride is actually putting their outfit on, right? Like the actual getting ready prep pictures. All the lights have to go off for several different reasons. 1, I want to remove any weird color balances and weird color casts that are going on in the room. 2, I want one light source. And I want that one light source to be the window. I don't need anything else. I don't need your bedside table. All that's gonna do is give me a weird orange color cast from the corner of the room, and it's not gonna help light you up at all. So more light is not always better light. I want good light, and that good light is coming from that window, whether it's 5 inches wide or takes up the whole wall. We're gonna open the curtains and then close the curtains down. So if the curtains in the room are closed, hoist them on open, good to go. That's it. We're gonna turn off the lights and we're gonna mess with the curtains. That's all we're gonna do. And we're gonna get this. This is one window, curtains closed almost all the way down, client sitting very close to the light. You can do this at 6 in the morning when the sun is barely coming up. You can do it at 3 in the afternoon when it's cloudy outside. Because when I've turned all the lights off in the room, it might be cloudy outside, but there's still more light outside than inside. And I know someone's gonna put up their hand and say, but what if there's no window? We're gonna get to that, I promise. This is all I want. One crisp, clean light source with the subject very close to where the curtains stop and the light begins. My instinct in the past used to be to open the windows as wide as possible. Now I actually close them down a lot. My ideal is really only about 3 feet of open window. Because the more I can bring it close, the more I can narrow that beam of light, the more I can play with that light falling on the face and having that dark background. And I can stand in the room and I can shoot directly at it. I can get close to it, like an 85-1.4 at 1.4. I can move around to the side, and now that light, which was coming kind of from behind my subject, is coming from the side. This is the same girl in the same spot for all of these pictures. I can come in close, so you can't see the light source at all. So, lest you not believe me, that's my room upstairs. I took this picture with my phone this afternoon. Yes, there's a toilet paper roll on the bed. I have a cold. I was sneezing all day. I realized when I put this in, I was like, oh God. But this was literally, my laptop's on my desk. This is where I was working this afternoon. It's a hotel room. It is your average everyday hotel room. So what I did was wanted to show you that you could make this anywhere, and where better than the place that I was sitting this afternoon polishing this program. So you've got the windows. You have those fake curtains that don't actually close. You know what I mean? Like 4 inches of fabric on either side, and it's a fake curtain. But behind it are sheers, and then the real blackout curtains behind it, right? So I started closing those blackout curtains down, 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 and then I put my hand in front of the curtains. That's the light I'm looking for, right there. And you can do it upstairs on the 7th floor in a Hilton in wherever I am outside of Chicago. I got in really late last night and fell asleep in my lift. That's what I want. One beam of light coming from one direction. And you'll see that as a constant theme throughout all of my work, is one great strong light source coming from one direction. And that is what that looks like. If you take my hand, replace it with a bride's face, and don't use your iPhone, that's what you're going to get. Very, very, very easy, not as hard as you'd think. If you get too close to the edge of the curtain, you're going to lose that rim of light around the face. So you see how her hand with holding the hairspray has crossed the curtain line? That's the same light that's on her face. It's the exact same light. You just can't see it because it's against the bright background instead of against the dark line of the curtains. This was taken in her living room of just a little duplex outside of Philadelphia. Add in more people, why not? You notice, if you look at the bride's face, she's got that beautiful rim of light. As you start backing away into the rest of the room, you start moving away from the light source, it's not as dramatic on the face. So over time, you'll start to notice how close do you like your clients to the edge of that curtain line to get the exact light you like. Maybe you like them a little farther back because you don't want it to be so harsh. Maybe you want them almost all the way at the edge because you want it super harsh. Next obvious question, what if I don't have curtains? It doesn't matter. This is a conference room at the Atlanta Botanic Gardens, literally the corner of a conference room. We just turn the lights off. And there's no curtains, but there's still a light source. And the light coming from outside is still brighter than the background that she's standing in front of. So I still get that light on her face, and I can still come at it from another angle. So I put my clients in that scenario, and it really just as simple as, hey, when you put on your suit jacket, do you mind standing right here? That's it. Not put your hands here and turn your head here and then do this. And sometimes you have to go in and tweak because people start, doing things and then they start turning around and then they start wandering off. And sometimes I have to go collect them and put them back, or someone who's coming in to help them get dressed will walk in and put their back to me. I'll have to come in and scoot them around. But I'm not positioning hands, I'm not directing moments, I'm not telling people what to do. I'm just putting them in really good light and letting them be themselves. What if I don't have a light at all? What if there's no window? What if it's this? 501 Union, actually one of my favorite wedding venues in Brooklyn. It's this really cool converted bar space. This is the getting ready room. It's that size. It has silver wallpaper and no windows. So I have a couple of different options here. I can pull out a speed light. I could pull out anything that I have that makes light. It could be a ProPhoto B1. It could be a B2. It could be an A1. It could be a speed light. It could be a video light. And I'm going to place it where I would want a window to be if a window existed in the space, if that makes sense. I find that for my purposes, for faking a window, for getting ready, I do better with a video light. Partly because I'm not constantly popping a flash in my clients' faces, partly because I can put the light and set it and forget it. I don't have to make them get ready in the dark. right? I basically give them a beam of light to get ready in. My video light of choice is the Stella Pro 5000. It could light up from here to the airport, pretty much. It is an incredibly, incredibly, incredibly powerful, very, very strong video light. And I'll put it on a light stand, usually at slowest power possible, because I'm just trying to light a little room, and I can get something like that. That could be a window. If you look at every other getting ready image that I showed you, the light looks like this. It's just coming from a window. So whether you're lighting a portrait or lighting something from a reception or lighting a getting ready, the first rule of thumb for me in placing a light is, if this were the sun, where would I want it to come from? And I put it there. And then figure out things such as, well, how much power do I need and what kind of modifier do I want? But this is just the Stella Pro 5000 with just the Fresnel on the front. Nothing funky, nothing crazy, nice and easy, and you can't see the silver wallpaper anymore. Score on that one. For added drama, block your light source. And what do I mean by that? Whoop. Here is a bride's house. I was in Richland Center, Wisconsin. This is her parents' house. It's gorgeous. They have these huge windows in the living room. Lots of obviously great light in there. But I wanted to make something a little bit more dramatic as she was getting ready. So I positioned myself in the other room, looking through from the room next to the living room, which was, I guess, a sitting room. I mean, I live in Brooklyn. I don't even have a dining room. I don't know what you call the room next to a living room that also has a sofa in it. I don't know. But I was in that room. Looking through into this room, the window is in front of her. You just can't see it because the way I positioned myself, it blocks the light source. It makes it makes people think just a little bit when they see it, oh, where did that light come from? It could be that huge window that we just showed you. It could be a speed light. It could be 9 speed lights. I don't know. This is the exact lighting scenario I showed you. Curtain partly open, client standing right in front of the curtain. I am smooshed up against the TV. So over there, on the left side of the image, it's not Photoshop. It's not flipped in Photoshop at all. I literally, my main cameras are the Canon 5D Mark IVs. And the Mark IVs are great because you can put them in live view and you can touch the screen and take your picture. So instead of having to contort my head to get it near the TV, I just take the camera off of my holster, put it on live view, put it next to the TV, get it exactly where I want it, touch and fire. Like so. So there are several different ways that you can tweak and retweak the same lighting scenario and make it look really good. It can look really dramatic. I've done this in hotel rooms that are $1,000 a night, and I've done this in hotel rooms that could not have been more than $49 a night. I've done it in living rooms, conference rooms, even rooms with creepy silver wallpaper. So when you walk into a hotel room and you think, oh God, as we often do, just know that all you have to do is clear out the space in front of the window, make sure you can close your blinds just a little bit, or put your subjects near that window in the way that that light falls in that beautiful rim around them. And then you can work it from multiple different angles. You can have them step forward and go in front of the shears and make a silhouette. There's a lot you can do. I just saw a hand. Yes?
What is your typical ISO and that kind of setting for like a window?
Anywhere from, oh gosh, from ISO 200 to 10,000. I'll push the Mark IV up to 12,800. But if I do, I have to absolutely nail the exposure and not crop after the fact. I don't crop after the fact anyhow. I think the only time I ever crop in Lightroom ever is if I kind of got lazy and tipped my camera to the side a little bit. I'll straighten it up. I shoot all of my family formals on a 5% tilt. I don't know why. How? Like how? I'll line it up and it's even, and I'll click and it's moved. But only for family formals. So if you are going to shoot at higher ISOs, if you have to bring it into Lightroom later and really push or pull the file up or down or crop it, that's when you're really, really, really going to see kind of a mess of noise. So you just have to be even more careful about really nailing it. I shoot a lot of getting ready with my 85-1.4 at 1.4, which does let me keep my ISO down, which is very helpful. I also use the 35-1.4 a lot for getting ready. But sometimes if I break out like my 24 to 105 f4, I'll notice that the ISO starts creeping up, and I don't mind, I just have to be ultra careful when it does that. Any other questions about getting ready? Yes?
I noticed in your examples,
Yes.
Is that a style, or do you really think it's just a better light?
I think it's definitely a style. Like, let's say that this is the window, right? And in my normal curtains closed scenario, they would be like here, and the curtain line would be here. You could have them step out and face the window, and you could put your back to the window and have that strong light hit their faces, and then have the rest of the room darken down in the background. It is beautiful, and I've seen people do it that way to great effect. It's just not usually the way I like it to look, for literally no reason other than that's just not what I like to do. And nothing is wrong. Like, we could all get up and talk about how all millions of different ways we do things. This might not be how Sal does it. This is definitely not how a lot of my friends do it. There is no right or wrong. Like, I really think in photography, there are so many things that are personal preference, manual or aperture priority. I don't care. Whichever way makes you happy and lets you get the results you want. Setting your auto ISO versus like using auto ISO, doesn't matter. However you get there, as long as you understand what you're doing, do that. So I know people that will put people in this scenario, but then will add in a little fill flash because they really don't like the dark. Like, they like the look, but they don't like it quite that much. They want to dial it back a little bit, so they'll use a little fill flash. Go to town, use a reflector, whatever makes you happy. This is just how I like to do it, and it also goes a long way towards masking rooms that may or may not look great. And if the room is really pretty and you do have them step back and you sort of shoot into the room, that can be super dramatic and gorgeous. I then just realize I have to clean the rest of the room and get people out of the back of the room. Because the last thing I want is like suitcases on the floor and like a bridesmaid stepping into Spanx in the background. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can clear a space about the size of this stage, but a lot of times to clear a whole room. But if that's also something I want to do, sometimes I'll actually have them get ready in someone else's room. Like, are one of your bridesmaids on this floor? Is your mom's room here? Could we take your dress or take your suit and get you ready in another room? We'll just go in somebody else's room. It's usually pretty clean. Yes, sir?
What if the bride has found a really expensive place and they want you to show the architecture or the settings of the place?
I mean, sure, but that doesn't normally happen when they're getting dressed. Like, usually getting dressed doesn't happen in like, right, and if it does, and I've gotten very lucky, and sometimes, like, there was a venue I'm thinking of right now that I took the bride downstairs and had her get dressed on the stage where they were later gonna put the band, because there were 3 windows, and then I opened up really big and showed the space. But a lot of times that's just not the kind of scenario I find myself in. I wish that was a problem that I had on a weekly basis. How can I show off this whole grand room? Is not really something I usually think when like a guy's trying to put a tux jacket on in the corner of like a Hampton Inn. I haven't coughed one time. You guys are great. I'm taking in all of your healthy energy. Any other questions about getting ready? Yes, ma'am.
One more. So typically you have the scenario where you have Starbucks cups all over the place.
You do.
So you have a bunch of those pictures, obviously, while the bridesmaids are getting ready and they're doing hair, and then you try to push that scenario where they're near the window and keep away that stuff during getting ready.
Yeah, and I do still try to control the getting ready room as best I can. Like, if I'm photographing somebody who's getting hair and makeup done and there's just junk around them, we will neaten it up. Because I do think, I'm definitely never going to be a strict wedding photojournalist wherein I don't touch stuff. I'll touch whatever. I have to move. And I also don't mind saying, like, hey, you're getting hair and makeup done in the bathroom under these fluorescent lights. What about coming and setting out over here by the window? And sometimes I'll try to, like, arrange that a little bit if I can. And sometimes I can't, and when they do like a touch-up later before they get dressed or after they get dressed, I'll scoop them into some different light. So I will control the scenarios as best I possibly can, but as with every part of a wedding, sometimes all you can do is all you can do. Like, I wish that we could art direct the whole wedding day, but it never really gets to work that way, which would be rad if we could. Okay, so scenario number 2, outside at noon, which does not look like this. I saw a couple of people, I was like, outside at noon, and I switched to this, and they were like, how did you do that? I didn't. This was 6 p.m. On an amazing day in Seattle where there had been just horrible fires, and they were getting the smoke from the fires, and it was awful, and looked beautiful at sunset, which was weird. This is not noon. However, that's noon. Every single image that I'm going to show in this next section was taken somewhere between, and I checked all of the EXA this afternoon, 11:45 and 1:30 p.m. in the dead of summer, which is not when you want to be outside. And this is when, in my early days of wedding photography, I would go running for whatever shade I could find, which, as we all know, is really hard to do at noon. And when it's earlier in the day, when it's later in the day, you can go under a tree and the shadows are long and you have more room to hide. Look at how short everyone's shadows are. There's not a lot of place to go hide at noon. So I stopped hiding and went straight out into the sun. And now I love the sun. I mean, not really, but I like it more than the shade at noon. 3 steps at noon. You want to create a line from the sun through your subjects to you. So if that door is the sun, the door you all walk through, I would need my subjects to be that lovely woman in the yellow hoodie. Not you guys, you. Because you're directly in between me and the sun. If you are not sure, look at the shadow your clients are casting on the ground. Even at noon, you're going to cast a teeny tiny little shadow, and it needs to be aiming straight at you, right? Here's the kicker though, find a dark background. Remember, with all of the getting ready stuff, we're closing the curtains halfway and we're putting your clients against the dark background. Why are you doing that? So you can see the light. I want to see the light at noon, so I also then need a dark background, right? You'll see, I have examples, I promise. And then I also try to do my best to surround my subject with shadowed areas. Because the thing that makes bright light look brighter is putting it next to something that's not bright, right? One of my favorite images that I've ever made, I think it's actually out on one of the tables out there. It's a bride and a groom, and they're holding hands, and one side is white, and one side is black. I took that at noon, right? Like you, I did, bless me. So, and to be clear, I'm going to tell you how to handle this. This is a scenario I never like to find myself in. I would much rather be outside at sunrise or sunset. But we don't always get to choose when we can go outside. Even though I do my best to have a hand in my clients' timelines, sometimes there's nothing I can do about it. Sometimes, no matter how much I advise to do this, that, or the other, we find ourselves outside at noon because that's just the way the day works. And I need to be able to make images that are just as good at noon as I can at sunset. So, line from the sun to you with subjects in the middle, dark background, surround your subjects with shadowed areas, and surround your subjects also with visual interests. I'll show you what I mean. 12:15 in the afternoon. This is an extreme example. They're itty-bitty in a really big scene. This is Old Westbury Gardens in Long Island. It is very Long Island. But it's basically a wooded area, excuse me, where you can apply for a permit and you can go take your wedding pictures there. They send you with like a little guide who walks you around the property, and they do a great job because they don't put a million wedding photographers on the grounds at once. But I'm walking around and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like it's noon, we're out here for an hour. What am I going to do out here at noon for an hour? It's July, which we've discussed how I feel about outside and summer. So I'm already in a very dark place at that time. But I'm looking around and there's all these walking paths, right? And the tree coverage is so intense in some of the walking path areas that it's dark, even at noon, because the sun can't get through the canopies. But there are parts wherein it opens up, almost where the paths cross at a T, and there's nothing over top. So it's noon, I put my subjects directly in the sun, and I removed myself out of the sun into the shadows. What that let me do, and you can see very tinily, there is, this image is on my website if you ever want to find it later. The light's clearly hitting the tops of their heads, it's hitting the tops of their shoulders, it's not really hitting their backs at all. Because if you think, people are standing like this, the sun is doing this. It's not 6 o'clock, it's not bursting through them in this aura, it's smacking right down on the top of them. But I can still use it in a way that's dramatic if I place them in the right spot and I put myself in the right spot. I could have come up close to them and it would have looked cool, but what really makes it super dramatic and really makes it stand out is that juxtaposition of the noon sun on the clients with the darkness of the rest of everything around it. This is also about 12:30 in the afternoon. And you can see, if you look at his tux specifically, the light is on the top of his head, the light is on his shoulders, there's almost nothing coming through. Anything that's lighting the back of his tux is bouncing off of the ground that they're walking on. There's no light behind them. If I took them from here and moved them over into the part of the scene, if I had composed the scene where they were against the buildings, you wouldn't have that dramatic light on the top of his head. You wouldn't have that light on his tux, because the background is so light, it would just blend into the background, even though it's the same light. This was a 12:30 first look by the water in Manhattan at a heavily touristy area, and you still have to make it look good. I can't do something like bring out 1 million lights and light up the first look at noon. Not only would it look completely different from the rest of my work, it's just not feasible. And in a lot of places in New York, I can't go set up lights. Somebody's gonna run me over. And they will not care at all. Some bicyclists would have killed me by then. But again, the sun is coming from behind them. Even though it's noon, it's still coming from a little bit behind them. I never use full flash. There's no full flash at all. Yes?
Are you exposing to your background or to the people?
I'm exposing for their faces. This is an example of, remember that first scene where they're in the woods and they're very tiny? This is noon. This is up close on someone against a dark background at noon. This is very, very, very bright. Yes, the highlights are going on the front of her dress. Yes, there's one highlights on the tops of their heads. Yes, there's a little raccooning going on under her eyes. I still, and again, back to personal preference, I prefer this to the look of bringing out a reflector, to the look of adding in something like a Profoto V1. Because the second I start filling in their faces, the second I start filling in those shadows, I lose the shadows. So an extreme example, it's right overhead, and I shot this and said, I'm gonna back up and make something a little different, but this is full on noon, sun coming from up above. I still like this. I like this better than going and finding shadows to hide in. This is also noon. Again, sun straight overhead. Slightly less dramatic around them because they're against a slightly patchy background. Not a full dark background. They're against a blotchy background. And when I talked about surrounding them with visual interest, this fountain in the front of them, which is literally about the size of this boat, by the way, it's not a huge fountain, the water that's coming out of it catching the sun, sparkling in the sun. You've got the dappled background, you've got the light on them, you've got the visual interest of the water coming out of the fountain, all at noon. If you're in the city at noon, sometimes you get light bouncing off of buildings. This is outside of Grand Central Terminal, my hands down least favorite place to take pictures in New York. They make you get a permit, and you can only be in the main concourse, and it's just a very complicated process. Something you don't want your clients to do on the wedding day is have to show up at a station master's office and get the permit and pick it up in person. You can't pick it up beforehand. It's kind of a time suck, and it's always just super crowded, and someone follows you around like you're about to break the law. It's a mess. But outside of Grand Central, there's really great opportunities to work with really difficult light, even at noon. So again, you remember that very first scenario where I put them in that bright, bright, bright sun and surrounded them with darkness? That's what I did here. So this is actually the shadow side of the building over here. Even at noon, the light was not hitting that building, but it was hitting another building and bouncing back even harder onto them. So once I put them in that light, even though the building behind them, it's noon, it's not full dark, right? It's just significantly darker than my clients. So if you think about it, there's a huge bright beam of light on them, and something that's about 10 stops darker than them behind them. Once you expose for their faces and bring down that overall exposure so that they're exposed properly, your already darker background darkens down more and more and more. So when there is that dramatic difference between the light on your subjects and the light on your background, a proper exposure on your subjects brings your background to anything. Yes, ma'am?
Are you spot metering your camera or are you using a light meter?
I don't use a light meter. I'm metering in my head. But when I could not meter in my head, I spot meter. And used it sort of as a jumping off point. And I would spot meter on the cheeks. Or if that scenario where we're in front of the window and you've got that rim of light, I'm spot metering on the rim of light. But here, I would have taken a meter reading right off of your cheek right there. However, you have to get there, spot meter or hand meter or meter in your head. I thought I saw a hand. Did I see a hand? I think someone must have just stretched. 1150 was like 1152 or 1153. They're walking from the shadowed part because there's overhangs in front of the buildings. They're walking from the shadowed part out to the street. And the second they get out to the street, the light is no longer hitting the awnings in front of the buildings, it's hitting the tops of their heads. So this is where I often change my own vantage point of the scene. So at a 70 to 200, I was almost all the way at 70, all the way at 200, and I brought myself down closer to the ground. The reason being, at noon, the sun is lighting up that street like crazy town. And if I shoot straight into the scene, I'm getting a lot of the ground into it. I'm not getting the interesting part to me, which is their faces, which is the light on them, which is that juxtaposition against the background. So a lot of times when I will have a very bright street or bright ground at noon, I'll either go in closer on my subjects and crop the ground out entirely, or bring myself down a little closer to the ground so that I'm not getting so much foreground in the image. If that makes sense. Questions about being outside at noon before we start talking about the flash? Yes? Yes. Green.
It's not just green, it's green, but magenta, like this thing I can just rub it looking like yours.
Right.
So any tips for that? Is that something else in the process or something else?
So I have experimented with trying to dial in custom white balances, but again, it changes so much when you're outside. If they're on a street, you're great. It's great. The second they step on the grass, especially in the summer, then it's green. And then they take 3 steps over, and now all of a sudden they're magenta, and I can't figure out why. Usually I fix those grid color casts in post. Because otherwise I would just be dialing in custom white balance every time they move, which you can do. I'm just not quite fast enough at that just yet, and it tends to frustrate me. And I don't like saying, oh, I can fix it in post, because that to me is a cheat. But color balance is something I don't mind fixing in post, because I think it's an easier fix. I'm not going to fix like a lighting scenario, but green faces, yes. I used to shoot Nikon. I shot Nikon for 10 years, and I was constantly fixing yellow and green faces, especially on the grass. And I'm not saying switch camera systems to change your color balance. Like, that's a little excessively extreme. I do notice it a little bit less on the Mark IV, but now I notice more magenta in the faces on the Mark IV, so I try to fix that just in the other way. But are you a Nikon shooter?
Yeah,
Which is an amazing camera, but I did notice, especially when you're standing on grass, a lot of green. Yeah, so I had a custom brush at one point in time that I think was like Nikon no green. I haven't used it in about 8 months, but now I have less magenta, and I use that one every once in a while. A hand went up somewhere, yes?
When you're shooting outside in these scenarios, are you aperture priority mode or are you full base mode?
I'm usually aperture priority mode. And the reason why is because I like it. And it's for the getting ready stuff, for the stuff outside like this. I have no logical reason why. And again, this is where personal preference kind of comes in. Is I find it in my head, I'm always adjusting exposure compensation instead of adjusting other things like shutter speed or aperture or whatnot. So when I am outside on aperture priority, I'm also using auto ISO. So really the only thing I have to do is control my exposure compensation, and I do that in my head and kind of know how much to go down to that. Does anybody else use auto ISO? Does anyone have no idea what that is? Great, either way, no problem. Yes, sir. I'm working my way back, I promise.
Will the same rules apply when there's cloud cover, or where you have to?
So the same rules don't apply when there's, it depends on how much cloud cover.
Okay.
If it's just a little bit, you still have some dimensional light, like just a bit. When you put yourself in those extreme scenarios, you'll get a little bit. If it is full on mud outside, all bets are off because everything's gonna look like crap.
Yes.
I mean, it's just all gonna look like crap. And then my options are either try to make it look less like crap with the natural light that I have, or start bringing in something like an off-camera flash to mimic sun, or like a gel B1 from a distance to make sun. And a lot of that really depends on where I am and how much time I have.
Okay.
Where I am and how much time I have. There was no comma and then some. That was a full sentence. Just badly done. Hands were elsewhere. Yes.
Have you ever had a bride freak out about backflip hair and the frizzy illumination of the?
No, because this is on every image on my website.
Okay.
And if they look at this and they don't like it, they're not going to like it. Right? I'm currently in negotiations with a prospective client right now that I think is actually probably a very bad fit for my services. And I have a very low criteria for letting someone hire me, right? Like, if they like my work, and I like them, and they like me, great. I don't do this whole, like, oh, I'm interviewing my clients as much as they're interviewing me. It's 2018, it is really hard out there. I'll take anybody's money, you'll give it to me. Anybody. Anybody. I don't care where you're getting married. I don't care. I think that everyone who wants to hire me and wants to give me money for my services should get 110%, even though that's not how math works, of my ability, and should have beautiful pictures. So I don't discriminate by what venue you're getting ready on, or do you fit my brand, or anything like that. The only thing is they have to like the work they're seeing, because this is what their wedding pictures are going to look like. So I've got someone right now who she came in and she was like, we don't really like silhouettes. And I was like, okay. I mean, that's a personal preference, it's totally fine. We just want to do silhouettes. And then she said, well, and I also really don't like when there's like a strip of light around people's faces. And I was like, okay. Can you tell me more about what you don't like about that? Because maybe what we're getting at is you don't love your profile, or you're worried about frizzy hair, or maybe there's a reason. She's like, I don't know, they're just, images like that are just always so dark. And I was like, okay. What about this album that you just looked through where literally every single image looked like that, right? I said, well, what did you think about this album? And she's like, oh, it was too dark. And I was like, well, so what are you drawn to in my work? Oh, your use of light. So what I'm trying to figure out is, does she like what I'm doing just when I post, when we do post on her images, do I just bump everything up just a hair? Like, if everything is just like kind of half a stop up, and she likes that? Or is there a disconnect between what she likes and what she wants for herself? And sometimes that's a big thing, is I can love someone's work, love it, but not want myself to be in that work. Does that make sense? So that's sort of the place where I'm trying to guide her through right now. I don't know where we're gonna go. She has to come to the place in her head of, can she see herself in this? And if she can't, I'm glad to help her find someone who will take care of her. But I don't ever want anyone to regret their decision after the fact. So if someone looks at this and is like, oh, I'm really worried about flyaway hair, are you worried about it for all of your images, or are you worried that like you're gonna have flyaways and we're not gonna fix them for your album? Like, I would want to figure out, do they not like that style of photography? Or do they just want to make sure that when I make them an album or make them reprints that the frizzies are gonna be taken away? And of course they do. Okay, dark perception. I hate love them. Oh, we're doing really badly on time. This is great. We're just getting started. I knew I was going to run over, and when I got here and Sal was kind of running over, I was like, we're great. It's great. Dark perception. You're going to have to get comfortable with flash. My least favorite phrase in the entire industry is, well, I'm a natural light photographer. That's great. We all love natural light. I would love to go through an entire day without having to wrangle a flash on my camera. Completely not feasible. My goal with a flash is to make the light that I would want if it were natural light. And once I get comfortable with my flash, I'm in a great place because I know that I can put light wherever I want it, whenever I want to. Right? So, my reception setup. And this flash reception setup I would talk to you guys about for 3 straight days. I can't do that. I think I would get in a little bit of trouble if I went that far over. But and I'm not here to try to sell you on any classes or come to workshops or anything. I do have a Facebook group. It's called, I think it's really long, it's like Susan Stripling's The Wedding School, Wedding Photography Education for Wedding Photographers. Like, it's a bad name. But you can find it, you can come in, I have education online, you don't have to buy it. But it's there if you want it. That was terrible. All right. I don't want to be the speaker that gets up and tries to say like, but if you want more information, buy this thing I sell, because I think that's kind of crap. However, going very deep into a reception flash setup is something more than a 15-minute part of the segment. So, but I'm going to give you the overview, and it will give you a great place to start and actual practical information. So, this is what my reception lighting setup usually is. I have one on-camera flash as needed for party dancing. Those long dark hours at the end of the night when everything's done, all the formalities are over, everyone is hammered, and they're just dancing for like anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. That's on-camera flash. I use the MagMod system. I usually have a mag sphere on there. The end. One off-camera, okay, look, calm down. Remote? There we go. We're just going to talk about two of them at once. My other setup is one off-camera flash with a MagMod mag sphere. I use that for introductions and sometimes for first dances. Sometimes. My other setup, one off-camera flash with a MagMod grid. You would have to pry that grid out of my cold, dead hands. That is my single favorite piece of gear for my reception, is that tiny little magnetic grid. I love that thing with my entire being. And I am angry that it took me several years of my friends saying, have you tried this thing? For me to actually pick up that thing and use it. I use it for toasts, I use it for most formal dances, parent dances, cake cutting, stuff like that. I don't use any additional room sets. I don't put lights up in the corners, I don't have multiple lights by band, I don't cross light or quad light or whatever. It's a very, very, very simple setup that's worked for me for a very long time. And if it ever doesn't work for me, I'll do something else. But for now, feel free to. So, one off-camera speed light with a mag sphere and approximately a quarter power. This will vary based on the size of the room, the distance of my assistant who holds the light on a monopod. Thank you. Sorry. There's a lot of NyQuil last night, you guys. I'm really sorry. We put one Canon speed light on a monopod, and we have a mag sphere on it. Easy peasy. Nothing on my camera at all except the transmitter that tells my mag sphere to go, right? We're usually about a quarter power. That's usually my start place. And for intros, we start super simple. My assistant usually stands about anywhere from 5 to 8 feet to the left or right of me, depending on the space. And we just want to throw a big, slightly directional wash of light across the room. That's it. Could I have lights in the corner also going off? Totally. Could I have lights from the side also going off? Totally. But I like the simple one light system. It stays cohesive with how the rest of my work looks throughout the day. Yes?
You pointing the mag sphere
Straight on. Straight on. Because my two options with the mag sphere are either straight up or straight on, because that thing's heavy and will not stay in the diagonal unless I change it. So it's straight on. Yes, sir?
Do you ever use CTO gel to match the
No. Why? I mean, honestly, I think they look cool, and I've seen a lot of photographers use them and love them. I've never used one. And the couple of times I've tried, I've been like, oh, okay, that's cool, I like this, and then never used it again. It took me 4 years to put a MagMod system on my camera. I'm not an early adopter of things, really. This is where I live for most of the reception. And this gets me through very difficult rooms while still being able to create a uniform look wedding after wedding. Is one off-camera speed light with a mag grid. It's usually about quarter power. I noticed that when I put the grid on, I usually need a little bit more power. And this is what I've got. Now, if you get a chance to peruse my website later, we are looking at it through a computer, onto a projector, onto a screen. They look super contrasty and very, very dark. What the grid does is it really lets me focus that beam of light. I'm not lighting the ceiling, I'm not lighting the floor, I'm just lighting the people. I have an assistant who holds it. I tell her where to stand, and she has to be ultra precise. Because with a grid, the second she gets lazy and her hands start to drift down, then I'm lighting their knees. There's not a lot of forgiving wiggle room with a grid. It is straight on at them, boom. And I tell her, listen, imagine the grid is like shooting out one burst of light, and that light has to hit their face every single time. That's what we're going for with the grid. Whoop, there you go. Sometimes I will move myself so that it is behind my subjects. My assistant stays. She stays in one spot. She doesn't move. I move. Because if I'm trying to move and she's trying to move and she doesn't know where I'm going and she doesn't know what I'm going for, then we are weird ballet dancers on the outside of the dance floor waving our arms at each other because we're all in the wrong spot. So I usually put her at a corner of the dance floor during dances. She stays, I move. So sometimes it comes directly from behind, much like the sun, right? If my flash is the sun, where would I want it to be? If my flash is the sun, where would I want it to be? Coming from an angle lighting that space. If you don't like this, if this makes you unhappy, because there's not a light on her face, great, put a light on the other side of the room with a grid on it. Now you've got them both lit. Put lights in every corner. You can build on this. This is just what I prefer. What it's doing with the grid is it's not lighting the background. It's not lighting the foreground. It's only lighting what it's hitting. Like here. Like here, it's right behind her face. And yes, I miss. And yes, sometimes it looks like their heads exploded during the first dance. It's this. Toasts. I use the grid on one off-camera speed light for toasts. It makes all rooms look the same. Whether there's a ton of decor and I'm shooting super wide open at 35 millimeters and getting the whole room and you can see everything, or whether I'm trying to isolate somebody standing in the corner of a reception room and make them stand off from the background, I can still use this. Same thing. The flash is almost always on the same power that it was on during the first dance or the parent dances, usually around about a quarter. I'm on full manual because I'm controlling everything at this point. Flash on manual, my camera's on manual. And I get this. If you could see it on the actual screen, I'm shooting literally directly in between the bride and groom who are holding hands. The light's not spilling on the floor, it's not spilling on the band behind them, it's just lighting the person. And that gives you a lot of freedom to really work around with the rest of the room like this. And again, what you can see, if you can see the screen better, all of the centerpieces, you can see all of the centerpieces off to the left. So all of these beautiful, elaborate centerpieces, I got kind of far back and shot through them. So the subject is being lit, and you can still have the graphic interest of the centerpieces. So that grid really lets you do a lot without it spilling all over the place. It lets me get way back with a 35-1-4. This was one long table in a very small space, and I wanted it to look very vast and grand and show the whole space. The grid is coming, the flash with the grid is coming from, what did that even do? Hang on. It's coming from over here behind a potted plant. My poor assistants, they climb in and out of foliage. They hide behind things. It's a rough place to be. Yes, sir?
Do you use multiple grids or?
Usually it's just one. If I really, really, really need to focus it, which is very rare, we'll use two, but usually it's just one.
All right.
Just one is usually sufficient. Also for moving subjects, if I double grid it and they move even like a quarter of an inch, I've lost it. This thing is losing fine. But as you can see, it lets me isolate my subject off of the background, much of like what I like to do with daylight. And the difference, if you're still wondering, between a mag sphere, the big, we call it the boob, which you guys call it that too?
Yes.
Sorry. I was like, that's really offensive, and yet it's what it is. The difference between that and the grid, we did a little bit of a test because I was like, okay, if I'm going to switch back and forth between these two, I want to really see what they're doing. So this is the sphere. One off-camera flash is coming from, like, it would be coming from one of you holding it right? It's lighting the couple, it's spilling a little bit onto the background, we're lighting up the scene really nicely. Same type of scenario, just changing the sphere for the grid. These people behind her are sitting as close to her as these people are here. With the sphere, it's hitting all of these people in the back. With the grid, it's only hitting her. I think it's super cool. that it took me 4 years to put just one thing on the camera, I'll get the rest of it in like the next decade. I want the new thing they have though. Oh, you guys, seriously, where you could put the 2-speed lights in the box? I'm so ready for it. A hand went up back there. Yes.
You said you're pointing the light directly at them.
Yes. Like straight at them. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. I'm just getting started with lighting, so I'm really curious.
Yeah.
So right now, your assistant is holding the light, obviously.
Yes.
So you've moved here.
Yes.
Do you just have one assistant, because then you like that other picture where you're getting the actual person doing the speech, you would have to.
She just
move
turns.
her. Okay.
She never leaves her spot. But if, let's say, I'm standing here and someone at that door is giving a speech, and my clients are this gentleman in the white hat over here, the only time she knows to move is literally to do this. And she watches me. Because I wave frantically and spastically when I need things. And sometimes she'll be doing this, and I'll see that she's like listening to the speech. And I'm like, you don't listen to the speech. You don't actually listen, you have to watch me. Yes, ma'am.
So when you're shooting the party dancing and it's on your camera,
Yes.
like you're moving fast, are you using the
Nothing
sphere
else.
straight on? So
It's the sphere, a lot of times bounced up, if I can bounce off the ceiling. If the ceiling is super, super high, I still go straight up with it. I just bump my ISO and I bump the power, because I like the way it shoots the light out.
you don't use the other one.
I don't. I've tried that.
Yeah.
It's cool and I like it. I just still like the look of a slightly bumped ISO and a slightly higher power on flash, straight up. My flash on camera is always on manual. I don't mess with this TTL stuff anymore because I'm smarter than my flash. And I need to tell it what to do. So I'm almost always at 8 power when my flash is on camera. Yes?
One thing to notice about when we're in dark contrast with brighter, that stuff, once that goes to print, what we're seeing, or what you see on your computer doesn't mean it's accurate.
Yes.
So everything that is brighter, what you're seeing, now when you go to print,
Yes.
are you talking things up or out in the photos, or?
No, because there is still shadow detail. So I'm very, very careful with it. And you can't see it on a, yeah. But when I do print, there is still shadow detail. We're very careful about maintaining some detail in the shadows unless I want to lose it entirely, which is very rare. I do know that if I'm out in the sun and I've got an ultra strong backlight, I am going to lose that. And I'm fine with that because I'm doing it on purpose. If it did bother me, if I did want more detail in it, I would use a reflector or use a fill flash. But we noticed that when we are printing, because I do a lot of printing for competition like Sal does as well, just making sure the integrity stays all the way through the print as well. Yes, sir.
So at Indian weddings, we have is we have like choreographed dances.
Oh, yes.
So how you can't, and when they have like 5 people dancing, it's
Yeah.
hard to just have one. So do you just put more than one light, or?
So if, let's say I'm at, like, shooting an Indian wedding, and they've got all of their bridesmaids are all doing a dance, there's like 6 of them on the dance floor at once. If this is the dance floor, and everyone's dancing, and they're dancing in this direction, because usually they're dancing out, or if my clients have a heavily choreographed first dance, and they want to make sure that, like, I get all of the poses just right. Sometimes instead of having that light come from behind, which won't do a good job if I'm shooting straight in and I want to see people's faces, I'll put my assistant with the on it on the front corner of the dance floor, and I'll go to the other corner and shoot into it so the light's coming from that way and I'm shooting that way. And if you have more than 2 or 3 people on the dance floor and I'm trying to do an off-camera flash look for that, that's when we're going to do that. We're not going to start backlighting or putting a grid on unless it's just 2 people dancing or people giving a toast. It's too narrow a beam for a lot of people on the dance floor at once. I have to hit the last scenario. I'm sort of on time. I'm actually not that bad. Scenario 4, portraits at night. What kind of light are we going to use? All right, I used to use a single Stella Pro 5000 because as I was getting better with my off-camera light, when I was doing portraits, I still needed to see where that light was falling for me to really know if I'm getting it right. And I enjoy that. This was taken, because I was actually taking the speed light, ignore that. I used to use the Stella for everything because it was easy. But now, more often than not, if I'm going to do a night portrait, it's going to be one off-camera speed light with either a mag sphere or a grid, usually the grid, because I'm having me and the grid are having a moment this year. Sometimes you get lucky, and you find light that you can work with for a night portrait, like standing them in an open doorway and shooting into the window. Or there's cool, dramatic uplights on the building across the street. This is a rare find, and you can't count on it. Usually I know I'm just going to be somewhere that's just freaking dark. The end. So, I used to only use a video light, which was great, and I left my assistant in so you can see she's right there holding the video light. And I wanted to see where it's coming from. I have a version where I edited her out. But I like this, it looks fine. There are a few problems with the video light though. I have to make sure my shutter speed stays high, because I can't rely on the video light to freeze action. So if my shutter speed needs to be high, my ISO starts to get high too. And it's okay, but I don't love that. And sometimes I really do want to freeze my subjects. I don't want to light everything up. I don't want to worry about having to stay at like 250th of a second or faster with a 70 to 200, because then that's going to jack my ISO, and I just wanted to start narrowing the beam. So I started messing around with barn doors on the Stella, which is again great, and I do use it and I do love it. But more and more, I've been getting away from things like this. This is a Stella. You can tell because it also has lit up the entire underneath of their umbrellas. Also cool. It's fine, it's a good look. But what if I just wanted to light them and I didn't want to light the umbrellas? If I'm being dramatic, like I'm being dramatic all day long, right? So then I use a speed light with a mag sphere, right? Now we're throwing light everywhere, which again, beautiful look. But again, I'm starting to notice I'm having trouble kind of controlling that light as well. This looks fine. The clients love this. This makes me nuts because I can see that I got too much light up in here, and I lit their faces, and that's great, but now I'm also lighting up the umbrella, and I don't want to do that. I want more of a beam of light the way I want for the rest of the day. So I'm going to switch to my one off-camera speed light with one mag grid, and I'm anywhere from a 64th power to quarter power, depending on how close I am to my subject and how much light I need. Now I've got this. Straight out of camera, just converted to black and white. I have one speed light right behind them. It's aimed up at them a little bit. Right behind them, there's a couple of steps down. The monopod is gaff taped to the step. Because I couldn't do it with my assistant down there without seeing his head, and I don't like to Photoshop people out later, so I taped it to the steps. Why not? But now I'm getting light only where I want light. Only where I want light. That's it. Not lighting the background, not lighting the foreground, just lighting my clients. It is taped to the front seat of the car. I asked the taxi first, do you mind if I throw some gaff tape up here? He said, do whatever you want to do. It's at 64th power. It is super way low, and it is taped to the seat right in front of them. No Photoshop. I did not darken the areas around them, straight out of camera, converted to black and white. Yes?
How do you keep it in focus, a higher f-stop?
In terms of, I shoot it just like everything. Like this is a 35-1.4. I think I'm at, it's on my Instagram, you can find it somewhere. I'm not at like f6. Okay. Like I'm still low, I'm still f2, f2.8, f4. If I'm having trouble focusing on them, sometimes we'll throw a video light on their faces so I can focus. More often than not, we use the light on our phones. And I use it to focus. Straight out of camera. One grid. That's it. We're literally just standing in a field, and it is completely dark. There is no light around them, and I use the grid to light them and preserve the sky. And then all I had them do right there is turn and face each other and breathe on each other because it was getting kind of cold, and we put the light right behind their heads. Same spot. Same power, same settings, same everything. We just moved the light. I realize this is an extreme amount of information for an hour. But hopefully this will at least give you a starting point where if you find yourself in a room that doesn't look great at first glimpse, or you find yourself at noon outside, or in a reception room that you think, God, how am I going to isolate my subjects here? Or you are in a field at night trying to make a portrait. Hopefully these will give you at least good starting points to start doing that. If you want to find me after today, I'll be in Atlanta next week with Sal, if you feel like getting on a plane. Talk about pricing next week, I'm pretty psyched about that. I love spreadsheets. That's not even sarcasm, I actually love spreadsheets. Don't be afraid to add light, you guys. Don't be afraid to get out there and throw a flash off your camera, because you could stand in this spot and you could make this at ISO 12,800, or you could make that. Same spot. Exactly same spot, same time of day. From this to this. Same lens. Just with one off-camera flash with a grid. So if you are scared of your grid, go get your grid, put it on a flash, practice. If you have questions for me, that big, long, convoluted name of my Facebook group, that's me on Instagram, that's us on Instagram. If you want to find me, I'm out there on the internet for you. I would love to talk to you in the break. I am not going to hug you or touch you at all, because I am exuding germs. So if you'd like to come, let me not breathe on you. Come chat at me. Anybody who's watching this later on video, you're welcome. But if you need to find me later,